So how many of us here are actually customers of any of these 4 telcos? Put your hands up. Only 1, 2, 3.
Not many.
How many of you are too shy to put your hands up? Okay, so can you give us a little bit of introduction to who you are, but very much tell people, you know, as we'll find out when we get to Natalie, the size of the breadth of all of your customer base. So start with you, Edgar. Tell us about Singtel, who you are and where you cover.
So I'm the CEO of Singtel Innovate, which is the corporate venture arm of the Singtel Group. We're a $250 million fund, and we actively invest globally around the world in interesting technology solutions. The Singtel Group itself represents over 550 million mobile subscribers across 25 different markets in Southeast Asia and Africa. We essentially have operations in Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, India, and Australia. And we're the largest group in that part of the world.
Thank you. Pablo.
Hello. Well, I'm a manager of strategic partnerships of Telefónica Open Future. Probably none, all of you know Telefónica Open Future, but it's the umbrella. It's the area where we involves all the open initiatives that we have in Telefónica. So if we imagine this as a ladder, at the bottom of the ladder we have 3 programs focused on fostering ecosystems with universities, with CSR corporations. Then we have 2 programs. That one is here in the UK and it's called WIRA Academies, and also we have another program that is co-working spaces. It's just co-working spaces for startups. And then in the top of the ladder we have 3 investment funds. One is focused on strategic investment for the telco industry. The other one is just for investments in the US, and the third one is just for investments in Latin America.
And Telefónica's customer base, can you maybe share with people where you are?
300 million.
Where we've heard Singtel are conquering Asia, which part of the world are you guys?
Latin America and Europe.
So Latin America?
Mainly, yeah.
Great. Ming?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm with Deutsche Telekom, and I mean, being in the middle of Europe, probably most of you will know Deutsche Telekom. So we're present in 15 countries, 160 million subscribers. We focus our business mainly in Europe, so it's Germany, it's Central Europe, it's Southern East Europe. On top of that, we run operations in the US with T-Mobile. So what I'm overseeing is the startup program called Hubraum. So this is a program we set up about 3 years ago, and the aim was to explicitly get closer to early stage companies, because we feel that the speed of innovation was so high that we needed to come up with something which was more compelling than what we did in the past. So that's what Hubraum is doing. It's a kind of accelerator/incubator program. So we run that in Berlin, covering Germany and Western Europe. We run that in Poland. This serves as a hub for Central and Eastern Europe, and we also run some operations in Tel Aviv. So that's about it.
I've always wanted to ask you, what does Hubraum actually mean? Or
it's a very German expression, actually. I don't know whether there are any Germans in the audience. Hands up if there are. Okay, so you probably know. Hubraum has two components, actually. Raum stands for room and space. Yeah? And the hub actually means elevating something. Yeah, so the Hubraum is a room where you elevate something, you make something bigger. But at the same time, there's another meaning, because the German word Hubraum actually stands for, is an engineering expression. It also stands for the cylinder size of a combustion engine. Meaning if you drive a big car, US car, 5-liter V8, the 5-liter, that's a Hubraum.
Great, thank you. I've had to come here to ask you that. And Natalie, can you tell us a little bit about Orange?
Yes.
Or Orange.
Orange, very good French. I'm impressed.
We've known each other a while, so I need to improve my language skills.
French is great. So
Merci beaucoup.
we are operating in 30 countries, covering Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we have a customer base of 240 million customers. And so I'm in charge of Orange Startup Ecosystem, open innovation within Orange Group, with 3 main pillars. We expose our APIs through a platform, Orange Partner. We invest in startups through 5 different fronts we have invested in. The major one is Orange Publicis Venture, which is a 300 million euro fund, and we are now launching Iris Next because it's managed by Iris Capital, and Iris Next will be a 500 million euro fund. And we launched our own corporate venture fund, Orange Digital Venture, early 2015. Because a startup needs money, but they also need customers, and that's why 2 years ago we launched Orange Fab, our acceleration program, and we are now present in 10 different countries, covering 4 continents to accelerate startups. That's a win-win program, accelerating innovation for our customers, and at the same time accelerating the growth of the startup.
Thank you. Edgar, can you maybe share with us, one of the things that interests me is what's the reason telcos are driving? Because obviously your investment side, each of you will have, we know, but a lot of what you do, is from spaces, from projects, doesn't have an equity position in the company. So why are you guys, are you all saints? I mean, what's the reason why you're doing so much of this?
Well, I mean, it's no surprise that, the last few years, telcos have been have you said that we're dinosaurs, we're eventually going to become the dumb pipe. And I think we all here, and I think a lot of telcos believe that there's still opportunity for telcos to continue to lead and enhance the customer experience, right? And for that, we recognize that the startup ecosystem is becoming a very important source of new innovation and customer experiences. And therefore, it's important for us to tap into those opportunities and find out new ways of delighting and providing good experiences for our customers. I think the very fact that all 4 of us have significant innovation programs, we acknowledge that we may not necessarily have all the right skill sets within the organization, and therefore partnering with this concept of open innovation becomes a very important piece of the pillar in terms of why we want to engage with the startup ecosystems.
Look, this is a real theme which we've been trying to grow, this whole concept of corporates meeting with innovation. And one of the challenges that often comes up is navigating. A telco is a huge, and especially, if we've added up all of your customer base, we'll talk more later about what you guys are doing. Over 1 billion people collectively, but each of you have got hundreds of millions of customers. And how do you find startups coming to? I really want to ask you, do you see yourselves as navigators? Because ultimately, we've got 350 exhibitors. Everyone wants, everyone's going to pitch you the latest idea. How do you go? Are you looking from these startups from the investment, or just say, well, you know what, we see ourselves not just outside, we're happy to navigate to improve the telco, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, actually, because we're all basically representing companies which have hundreds of thousands of employees. So navigating through the organization is one of the major challenges for every startup, but also potential partner coming from the outside world, actually. Yeah. So the way of how we deal with that is twofold. First of all, we try to communicate very explicitly and very clear what business areas we are interested in, and I think that applies to all of us. Yeah, so there are certain areas which we all believe it's going to be the kind of next big thing. Just think about Internet of Things, just think of big data, customer analytics. So these are topics where all of our organizations strongly work on. So we try to communicate that to the startup ecosystem so that they know in advance which areas we would be specifically interested in. So that's number one. So, and the number two is that if startup companies do approach us, we need to quickly figure out to which business that would potentially fit or not. So all of us have kind of internal navigators within our own startup teams, yeah, and their sole purpose is actually to do the connections to the business units and to make sure that there's a meaningful conversation between the startup company and one specific or a couple of a few specific business units.
Exactly, no, because Natalie, because I wanted to ask you is that obviously you've got your business in France, in Middle East and Africa. How do you, that's a whole challenge itself, you know, navigating internally. How do you find, because obviously, you know, there's only 365 days of the year, you know, how do you struggle? Because ultimately you're driving this innovation. How are you managing internally to navigate around? Because obviously you've got hundreds of companies coming to you. There's only so many you can work with. And at the same time, where do you, you know, are you prioritizing different areas? Let's get it working in France and then we'll move it to different countries. How are you balancing that?
Well, in fact, we are, well, within my team, we want to be the preferred entry point for startups within the group, because as you mentioned, the group well, we have plenty of people within Orange, and so we really are a small team, agile team, and keeping sometimes a big corporate you can have can maybe complex, and so we keep the complexity for ourselves and being very agile with the startup. And then, as I mentioned, we have Orange Fabs accelerators in 10 different countries, and so we want to attract the best startups in the different countries, and then to help them scale up and go international. Working very closely with the different countries within the group, working also very closely with the different fabs. And it's really, for example, you can have a startup working in accelerated in France and attending a demo day in another country, in another fab, and then being able to work and deploy in another country. So that's the idea, and we strongly believe that innovation is coming from the mixity of the different cultures, and that's why within an internal innovation team we are working in projects with marketing guys, engineers, designers, and I think that mixing the culture of cooperation with, between startups and brands, it's also a way to go for innovation.
Thank you. And Pablo, Natalie mentioned it briefly on the whole cultural thing, and how are you finding, because ultimately you've got, you know, Chile, South America, Argentina, all these places are very different to Spain. How do you manage internally with obviously different parts of the world? We're going to talk to Edgar a little bit later, because you've got, you know, Thailand to Singapore to others. How are you guys managing with, you know, the Latin America versus the Europe, and dealing with, you know, even something from payments in one area is really forefront and the other is totally behind?
Okay, I think we have three common points of interest. The first one is that we have a team composed by 20 people in the coordinating all the spaces, all the countries. So we have 20 people in Madrid speaking daily with the startups of Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, London, Munich, wherever. Secondly, we have communication daily as well with the business units of Telefónica. So every time they have a need of payment solution or any big data solution or anything that they need in Brazil, we know this daily as well. And third of all is because we have the support of our chairman and our CEO. So this is basic for an open innovation program.
That's going to lead me to the next point. Because obviously, do you guys, I've seen over the past few years how, we've got a program downstairs, I mean, with your guys with the Challenge Up, and I'm sure next year we're going to see more programs of each of you doing. Are you really seeing this drive of corporates and your telcos really jumping on the innovation? And Natalie, you had Orange involved with us a few years ago. I used to joke that when we started these events, it was a bit like the children's table. The startups were at one end, the brands the other, and now everyone's chasing the startups. Where do you each see, as a quick fire question, where do you see, and if we were to be sitting here in 2 years' time, where do you think the telcos are going to be going with these drives of innovation? What do you think will happen from the entrepreneurship of inside the organizations to compared to, we're going to see one of the startups being the new CEO. What do you think, Natalie, is going to be the next 2 years with telcos and startups being together?
I think that we are working closer and closer with startups, and I think we are going on working closer and closer, and I think that it also makes really sense to work together, and that's why I think also we are...
You've just read my next question.
all here, all together on this panel, because I think we have plenty of things to do also together, because open innovation is for brands and startups, but it's also brands together working well together for innovation.
So that's actually my next question, is we all sat together in Tel Aviv and we had this announcement that 4 telcos really spanning the globe have decided to come together to collaborate, and I really wanted to draw to this audience a little bit about, maybe Edgar, you can recap a little bit about why the 4 of you have decided to say, actually, we want to work together. Why?
I think it's very simple. I mean, we're all telcos, and so from one perspective, we all face similar problems in our markets. But today, we're very specific and kind of regional in terms of Europe, South America, Asia, and so forth. And I think, as we all know, innovation is not just the remit of Silicon Valley or whatever. And ideas which are being generated in South America, which Telefonica is working with startups in South America, may be just as relevant to some of the markets in Asia. And what's happening in Asia may be relevant to some of the markets in Europe. And for the first time ever, now we have an opportunity. As Singtel, we would never have been able to access what's happening in the South America ecosystem. Now, obviously, with the partnership here, we now have access, and we can get a sense of what's happening and the business models and the technology and solutions which are coming out of that market. And at the same time, we can also offer our portfolio companies and companies that we work with the ability to gain access into Europe and South America through this relationship. So we see it as a great way to catalyze the kind of the innovation ecosystems across all our different markets in a way which I don't think has been done before, which is to cross-fertilize across different regions in the world.
Obviously, this is quite a new, it's been, 2 months since you guys have been starting to talk about this. Where do you think this is going to go? Because obviously, you've mentioned, you've all invested heavily in your own right in your various programs. What do you think is going to happen if we're here this time next year? What do you think we'll be seeing or talking about?
So first of all, we announced the partnership, as you said, about 2 months ago in Tel Aviv it was. And since then, we started with the major work, which is we developed an application form. It has 20 pages. No, just kidding. So we did not aim to do something in a kind of very formalistic way. We said, okay, let's get the ball rolling. So the most important thing is that we create value to the startup community. And therefore, what we did is to immediately start talking about the startup companies we find valuable for our own business. Because the fundamental hypothesis is that once the collaboration between a startup company and one telco has proven to be beneficial for both sides, then it would be relatively easy to roll that out to other partners, because the business logic would apply as well. So that process we have started, and I think we're making good progress on that. So we're looking into a couple of companies on our Deutsche Telekom side, for example. We learned about companies coming from Spain, coming from the US, companies we did not have on the radar screen before. So actually what Edgar said, that became reality. And hopefully we're going to push that further, so that in a couple of weeks or months, we're going to have concrete partnerships which we then can talk about in more detail. So, and that's exactly what I would expect from the next meeting, unBound London 2016. We sit here and all of...
Got our event in Singapore in May, so we'll take you all to Asia.
Get an update then. Yeah.
Absolutely. So all of the audience is getting back, and they're listening. Okay, you promised something, so...
Sure. And Natalie, obviously this is all, we're on mission. How do you think in the short term startups can benefit from this, but really from tangible? Because obviously there's do you see that obviously you got to be careful what we say now that you're going to do. Is it the joint investment, or it's more about market access? And are you going to have internally, because not every startup that's relevant, that Orange is working with, is relevant to Singtel or Telefonica, because you've all got your own difference. And how are you going to handle those situations?
Well, through our Orange Fab program, what we want to do is to help startups scale up through partnerships, leveraging on our customer base. And in the countries where we have operations, we have more than 50% partnership at the end of the acceleration program. So, of course, all the startups accelerated by Orange Fab may be not of interest for Telefonica, Singtel, or Dutch Telecom, but some of them are. And we want, through this alliance, help really future talents and help some of the startups really to become international leaders through this, because together here we are representing more than 1 billion customers all over the world, so we are very proud to be billionaires. And so I think that's really, really valuable for startups. So at first from access to market, and then from why not for common investment.
And Edgar, obviously you, Singtel is very strong in Asia, and you guys, hub is Singapore in the region. Do you think that let's take in your AIS in Thailand, a startup there is thinking that actually they have the ability to go into South America? Because this is really very powerful that you guys are giving people this global reach. And do you think the startups understand ultimately they're fighting to survive, and then you're giving them this, it's like a kid in a candy shop, you know, from one idea they can go everywhere. How are you going to deal with some of these situations?
Oh, look, I think every startup's going to obviously focus on their home market. They've got to prove themselves out there. But then the question is, what next, right? And so for example, you know, companies in Thailand, you know, startups, they're going to go maybe initially into Southeast Asia. But beyond that, they don't actually know whether there's an opportunity in South America. So who better to ask than to actually reach out to somebody who's working in South America and saying, do you think this idea will work there? And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them access to knowledge and local know-how so that they can very quickly determine whether the opportunity really exists and it's real there. And part of what we're trying to do is provide that local knowledge so that they can quickly determine, actually, maybe it's not going to be suitable for South America because what we hear from Telefonica, this is the way how it works in that part of the world, right? Or be provided introductions to other people they can talk to. So it's not necessarily that all of them are actually going to realize, okay, I can go to Europe. But some are going to realize, yes, actually my solution was going to work very well in Europe. And now I have an ability through this partnership to actually dive deeper in a way which is quick and efficient to actually understand whether the opportunity is something worth pursuing and potentially have some partners who are willing to help them along that journey.
Do you think you'll ever, just throwing an idea out, expand with other telcos or other parts in? Because I know it's spoken about before, but you guys, you know, if you think Deutsche Telekom, Intel and Cisco have come together for IoT. If there's a challenge, I don't know, payments that you'll involve banks, have you thought about expanding this whole, you know, so we can have up here maybe next year 10 of you? Or
So I think the nature of this partnership is open innovation. Yeah, so in principle, this is not limited to the group basically sitting here on this panel. However, I mean, we put our emphasis in the beginning to really, as I said before, to make things happen. And therefore, we wanted to keep the groups somewhat limited to simply do the basics, actually. So, and I would expect that in 1 year's time, we've tested several things, and we laid the foundation of what then would be open to more partners. Yeah, so that would be my view on this.
and
Probably we'll expand with new telcos, but probably not with other companies focused on payments, focused on big data or IoT. This is an alliance just for telcos, and this is the core business of our alliance.
And just want to, as we've got a few minutes left, just ask you, you know, because obviously it's great that we've got 4 telcos from around the world together. What do you think generally is the biggest challenge with the telco at the moment? With it payments? Because I know you've got customers in Africa where many things different. But if I was to say to you, I'm going to ask all of you this: the challenges facing the telcos. I'd like to think what you think globally, and also a little bit about you from the different regions you are. Like, what are the biggest challenges do you think is happening?
Well, globally, we are working together on IoT, big data, security, and for our part, within Orange, also on the mobile banking domain. And yes, as you mentioned, in Africa, we have launched Orange Money, which is doing very well, a mobile banking solution, and we are now also deploying mobile banking solution in Europe.
Very good.
Well, I'll give a high-level answer, two actually. On the consumer side, I think the biggest challenge for our industry is to maintain a meaningful customer relationship. Historically, it was very clear what the offering of a telco operator was and is. Today, it's much more blurry, actually, and the times of WhatsApp and the time of Facebook and what have you. We need to find offerings that where it's clear that the telco are the ones who have a natural kind of position to give that offering to the consumers. On the business side, I think the major challenge is to help our customers in managing the kind of digital transformation, which in essence every business customer is in.
I think that it's crystal clear that the more the thing that we need, the challenge that we are facing the telco industry is to be more flexible with the customers, and this is the most important thing that we need to bring from the startups.
Yeah.
I think for us, I think telcos in general have amazing access into the markets in which they operate. I guess where we're still struggling today is in terms of identifying the ideas and the problems that are going to enhance the customer experience and help customers with delighting them and providing new capabilities. And that's where obviously the connection and wanting the desire to work with startups comes from, because we have that distribution and access capability. But on the ideas front, maybe that's where we're not as strong as we could be, and therefore there's the opportunity for startups to work with us.
And just another quick fire question before we wrap up. Are you guys worried about the rise of Apple and FaceTime and WhatsApp? Because do you think there's going to be other stuff coming? Because ultimately, we all, we've seen how the billings change. Now it's not about minutes; it's about data. Are you worried that there's other juggernauts could be coming through and affecting the business, or are you worried? Actually?
No, I think it's very stimulating because yes, things are evolving very, very fast, and I think that many industries are impacted by all those by these digital revolutions, and new industries are going to be impacted, and that's also for us an opportunity.
Me?
Well, I don't think that Deutsche Telekom is worried about the Apples and the like. However, I mean, it's very clear to us, like everybody else actually, that value chains are actually breaking up, and that the fact that we're talking about data and the internet and so on and so forth, so that this will create completely new constellations. So for us, it's not about worrying, it's about finding the best partners actually, to jointly develop propositions which are being accepted by the market.
Yeah, I think it's not a question to be worried. It's just a question to compete clearly, with the same taxes, with the same regulations, and probably it's not only a question of the telco. It's a question of the European Union and the US government as well. Yeah.
All the above.
Add something else. Ed.
Nothing more to add to that.
I also think we should shamelessly promote our session tomorrow. I mean, one of the things when we guys spoke said to do something. So we're having an opportunity tomorrow. It's in the program. Meet the telcos. So there's startups are coming to chat and meet. And I know you guys are all here available. So if any companies want to meet with you guys or see, you're ready and available, and to thank you all for being here. We've actually caught up a bit of time and wanted to say thank you for participating. And ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Edgar, to Pablo, to Ming, and to Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you.